something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
What the f*** is that, dude?
Hello, beautiful people. Hope you're doing all right. It's been one of those connection issue kind of times. Going to tell you tonight, courtesy of, well, we fingers crossed, a telco rather than a space force or a space-based, is it really, satellite system. We'll see how well it goes. I hope you've not been too put out by the last 24 hours or so without being without me. I don't think there's too many people struggle from not hearing from me, but there are a few who are struggling at the moment. I've been flat out with some issues here, and I've been unable to get to a lot of phone calls in the last couple of days. So to those people who have been ringing, I just wanted to apologise and say I will get to you. Just snowed, and I have a lot of people calling me about various different things at the moment. One of those people has just sent me a text, and we do see him in the chat occasionally, and he needs a bit of help at the moment. So, mate, I'm not going to mention you here in the show, but you only sent me this text just minutes before I went on air. I think you'll be watching, so please hang around. After the show, I'll be giving you a call. We'll fix this issue that you're facing at the moment. But at the moment, I don't even know whereabout you are. Although I think I've got a vague idea. So we'll see what we can do to help, mate. But everybody's doing it tough at the moment. And some of us doing it tougher than others. I'm not one of those. I mean, yep, we've all got tough issues in our life. But, by other people's or by most standards, I think I'm doing pretty well compared to many others. So I'm grateful for the support that I get, and the help and the love that I get from this family, and it empowers me to keep moving. What also empowers me to keep moving is the great family that we have in this chat. And tonight, Sunflower was first in 2 days after celebrating the birthday hangover. Don't know if there really was a hangover, but I hope you had a really great birthday, Sunflower. And of course, as she always says, please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. We're not on Voice of Freedom. Bob's little chat on Saturday morning, the Bob is back for real chat, got us banned on medical misinformation grounds. It's ridiculous. However, the same chat's still up on Num2K. So I don't know. We just smile benignly and move forward, and keep trying to expose the stupidity and the corruption, the evilness that is amongst us in our communities. And I've got to tell you, folks, in South Australia, the Premier there, Maladicsux, or whatever his name is God, he's got a ripper. So there is new legislation which has gained assent that will block political donations. Now, on the face of it, that doesn't sound like a terribly bad idea. However, it does have some pretty big ramifications. Now, in South Australia, there is a gentleman who is putting his hand up to run for the people of South Australia and join the parliament, try and bring some common sense to it. His name is Kym Hansen, and he is joining us tonight. G'day, Kim. Nice to have you back on the show. I've got to say,
mate. I had to stop laughing.
Sorry?
I had to stop laughing. I was laughing at your Maladicsux or whatever.
Yes. Yeah, well, this is a man who may well have been doing a bit of that in his time to those above him, because to portray this piece of legislation as a wonderful thing for the state, and I dare say this is a tester for the nation. He's going to ban all political donations, but it goes a bit further than that. He's already put his foot in the court and in last week or two has banned the use of corflutes in political advertising. Is that right?
Yeah, so the corflute legislation, or the adjustment to the Electoral Act in regards to corflutes has ascended. This legislation that we're talking about here in regards to the donations, that hasn't ascended. So that's still going through their houses. The idea of the corflutes, though, only applies obviously to the state elections because the federal laws overrule state laws, don't they? So under the Federal Act, you should be able to still put your corflutes up, although that will be an interesting endeavour because I know the last time we spoke, I was only going to run for the state, but I've decided I'm going to stick my hand up for the federal election. So we'll see what happens.
Tremendous.
Well, I don't know if it's tremendous. It's gonna cost me a bit of money. But if this legislation gets up, sorry, mate.
Yeah,
talking. If this legislation does get up, it's going to cost the taxpayer more money because they're then going to be paying for independents and the major parties to run a campaign.
Yep.
But we'll get into that.
Well, this is where the devil is in the detail, because you're probably not going to find too many people who say, bloody great. Without political donations, there won't be political advertising, and there won't be this and there won't be that. Well, that might be all great, but the bulk of the political advertising comes from the major political parties. And believe it or not, this won't affect them one iota, I don't believe.
Because they got membership. So they got membership. They also get, I know the Labor Party gets supported by the unions, but in Maladicsuk's pitch, where he got a bunch of people clapping for this stuff, is that he's saying that he wants to take the unions out of politics, which makes no sense to me because the Labor Party was built on the back of unions. So I'm not too sure what's going on there, but it sounds like a bit of a Trojan horse to me.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me too, exactly like that. So if they remove the ability for political donations, okay, that means big moneyed people won't be able to walk in the party or the Labor Party, throw $100,000 at them. It also means that a farmer, and the local independent isn't going to be allowed to do that.
No, you're just going to have to be a lot more sly about it.
Which, of course, opens you up then to their electoral laws and frauds and rules.
And copping a big fine.
Copping a huge fine. So they're going to curtail the ability for any independent to raise money to run a campaign. That'll be the net result of this, won't it?
Ultimately, yeah, but obviously what they've got in here is we'll go through a bit of it. Vince dumped me in this very quickly, and obviously dumped you in this very quickly. So, what they've changed, or what they're proposing to change, is a number of things in regards to what a political party is and what a candidate is. So the changes aren't just about political donations. It's about a number of things. Like there's parts within this bill that they're putting forward where it increases the current size of parties, which is about 200 signatures. So you need 200 signatures to create a party at the moment within South Australia. What they're now proposing is that you need 500 signatures of members to form a political party. So they're not only trying to change what you can do in regards to raising funds to go for an election and put candidates forward, but they're also changing the numbers of people within a political party. Also, another thing that we found while we were going through the legislation is under the proposed amendments to the Act, any political party must be formed at least 8 months prior to the election being called. So if if you just like in the current legislation, if you decided I don't like the way things are going, and you've got a whole bunch of like-minded people, and you get together and you form a party, you could do it, say, 6 weeks, 8 weeks prior to the election. What they're saying is it has to be 8 months. So you need to have a body together if you're going to run as a political party within 8 months prior to the election, which isn't too bad because the state election isn't going to be until 2026. So for those people out there, if this ascends, you're going to want to make sure that you are 8 months prior to any election. Otherwise, you can't run any candidates.
I'm staggered that, well, not through, because obviously the parliament is there for the beck and call of the elites, I think, and obviously in South Australia, they dress it up very, very well. I've got I think I've got a post here somewhere that this guy put up. We want the money out of politics. So this is what the Premier said. Since its foundation, our state has a rich tradition of leading the world in democratic reform. In the 1850s, we pioneered universal male suffrage and the Australian ballot. Half a century later, we did the same for universal female suffrage and became the first jurisdiction in the world to grant women the right to stand for parliament. Now we are on the cusp of becoming a world leader in ending the nexus between money and political power. We want money out of politics. Bullshit. We know it's not easy. These reforms may well face legal challenge. I bet they will. But they are attempting to deliver them. This bill will be introduced to the parliament in the near future. You can see he's framing this because the South Australian Parliament was responsible for many great political reforms in this country, but he's framing this as another one that might well go national.
We're certainly going backwards a bit. I mean, we do have the voice to Parliament within South Australia, and some of those people didn't even have the time to vote for themselves. So, like, seriously, you put yourself forward as a candidate for the voice to Parliament, and you don't even bother to vote for yourself. There is so much money being wasted by. I mean, don't get me wrong, Maladicsux is doing some good things, but some of those good things were started off by the Liberal government that obviously got voted out.
Yeah.
But this just seems to me that this legislation, the Corflutes legislation, is a push for Labor and obviously Liberal and the Greens, who everybody knows about, to restrict who is going to be able to present any form of likely, other option. So a better option, or just somebody else other than the major parties. The taxpayer is apparently, through the AEC, going to be paying candidates $2,500 in order to take money out of elections. Now, I was having this conversation with Vince earlier, and we were talking about how much we spent when we ran for the federal election against each other, funnily enough. And we're both on par. Like, the amount of money that it costs to not only get your marketing material out there without donations. Did you freeze up then, or was it me?
Yeah, I did. I didn't hear a word of what you said. Everybody else might have.
So I'll start again. But with this legislation, the amount of money that the taxpayer is going to have to pay candidates in order for them to run isn't even going to come close to covering any kinds of costs. And it literally, and a few of the comments on Maladicsux' Facebook page, along with mine, have gone unanswered and ignored. But the reality is, they're taking money out of politics. No, they're not. They're just making it unachievable for the everyday person to be able to get enough people behind them to support them to run. And give it a go.
The major parties, or any party, can have members and membership. That will only raise you to a certain level of funding for your campaign. But what the major parties have, the likes of the Liberal, the Labor Party in particular, and probably to a lesser extent the Greens and One Nation, they have a bankable base. Whether people are aware of it or not, every vote is worth some money to the people who are running and get elected. And if you attain over, I think it's 4% of the vote, might be 5% of the vote, you get paid. I want to say it's a bit over $4 per vote that you got.
I think it's $2 something, mate, to be honest.
Is
for
it?
the federal, and I'm not too sure what it is for the state. If people actually look at the draft legislation that's up, there is an explanation as to what already established parties will get. So if you're a newly formed political party, or you're a new candidate or that of a like, you'll get $2,500 from the AEC for each candidate that you are running, right? But for already established parties, such as Liberal, Labor, the Greens, they will so this is section 130 PA. Now, I didn't write this garbage. It's been written so that you can, like, for me, I can barely understand it. I have to read it a couple of times, but, a lawyer would. So 130 PA, advance payments relating to the House of Assembly districts at general elections. Subject to this division, in relation to general election, the Electoral Commission must, in a manner prescribed by the regulations, pay to the agent of a newly registered political party. On the commencement of the capped expenditure period for the general election, or within 1 month of the date of registration of the party, whichever occurs later, the amount of 2,500 2025 index for each candidate endorsed by the party in a House of Assembly district, up to the prescribed maximum number at the general elections. And I'm not going to keep reading, but that's how it's written. But Part B of that says, pay to the agent of a registered political party, so an already established one, Labor, Liberal, the Greens, One Nation, the Nationals, etc. They will pay to the agent of a registered political party other than a newly registered political party, on the commencement of the capped expenditure period for the general election, an amount equal to 60% of the notional amount for the party, and as soon as reasonably practicable after the issue of the writs for the general election, an amount equal to 20% of the notional amount for the party. That's just Part B, and then it just continues going on. So, if you are, say, the shooters or what's the marijuana club, party,
legalized.
those parties there are already established. So the notional amount would be presumably the amount that they have received in previous elections. So an idea of how much of that. So say they only received, let's be a little bit liberal here, 3 or 4%, right? 3 or 4% of the vote, they're going to get 60% of that 3 or 4%, which is fuck all, really. It literally, it will kill any already established parties unable to then move forward.
The other thing with the big parties, of course, because they have a guaranteed vote level and they speak at the highest levels to the banks, they can get loans. And there is nothing that stops them getting a loan to get those political ads on the TV.
That is literally in here as well. So it says that you can get loans, right? So what independent or minor party is going to be able to go to a bank, which is obviously an approved lender, and say to them, I need a loan of $30,000-$40,000 to run for Parliament.
Yeah.
And I should be able to get this amount of votes.
And I've got to quit my job, and I've got to quit my job while I do that.
Yes.
Yeah. So there goes the independence completely.
Yep, absolutely. And
Wipe them clean out.
for me, when I read, I'm going to use the last federal election as an example. So for me, I didn't receive that much in donations. So I was bankrolling the majority of that myself. And even then, I couldn't, when it came to advertisement, I couldn't even come close to like Tony Passon and whatever the guy's name that ran for Labor. You just couldn't come close to getting your name out there to compete with that. And the whole idea of corflutes is and marketing material, it costs a lot of money. Those little flyers that most people throw in the bin, they cost a fair chunk of your I easily spend about almost $3,000 on bloody flyers and stuff. So it's that in itself. Plus, in the federal election, you have to pay, funnily enough, almost $2,500 just to nominate as a candidate. I don't know how much it costs in the state, so because I've never ran for the state. So it's you can't take money out of politics when it costs money to do everything that you're trying to get your name out there and etc. But will it hinder the major parties? It won't. It's going to hinder the little people.
It'll only help the major parties because it will silence a difficult thing for them to do, to ram through legislation like this and other ridiculous things like they're doing at the moment. But this will just make sure that anything that the people try to get up and work with independents is going to be that much harder to get over the line.
Yeah, the main thing that I push when it comes to putting across the independent movement, etc., is even if you want one of the major parties, put a number one next to an independent or a minor party and try and get as many other people to do the same, because the only way that any independent or minor party is going to get anywhere is to get a one next to their name before Labor and Liberal, so that they can get the majority of the primary votes. Because the preferential voting system is rigged. It's rigged, not saying that it's rigged as in you can't beat it. You can beat it. You just got to get a one next to your name.
Yeah. Yep. That's the key. Getting a one beside your name. Let's not get into the preferential voting system. Another thing that's actually
illegal. Mate. We can hook into it all. Look, it is what we've got. It's the tools that we have, and we just got to work with those tools until we can get some people in to Parliament to rectify the issues with our laws. Both, all of them, right across the board.
So tell us a bit about you. And I mean, until you decided to step up to politics and put your head above the parapet, we're trying to encourage as many people as we can who are like you, community-minded folks who want to do the right thing with their communities and by the nation. What was the turning point? What made you eventually decide to step up?
Look, there's a number of things that have happened in my life where I've looked at legislation and just gone, what the hell is going on here? It's garbage. I mean, I was a copper for 17 years. And you could see the flaws within the legislation. It's mostly poor people that end up in prison. That's the reality of things. And it's shit. It is shit. And the way that the mentality of some coppers is garbage as well. But the problem isn't necessarily with those people enforcing the law. The problem is with the people making the laws. So a lot of the laws are so convoluted and difficult to understand at best of times that I was starting to get the shits up. Then you had COVID. So you had the whole Wuhan special coming out, and the way that the government managed that, again, I value my freedom quite highly. And the things that were happening there were concerning. The silencing that happened there. I mean, I was one of the people who was saying it came from a lab, and lo and behold, after we got censored and silenced, etc., it came from a flaming lab. So, it was all those sorts of things that were happening. And then I look at our politicians, they don't represent us. They don't have a grasp on what's going on. And the amount of money that our politicians spend. I mean, I did a TikTok not that long ago talking about how much of a travel bill Adam Bant, Peter Dutton, and Albo Squeezy. I thought Tim Dwyer would like that one. That's what he calls him. The amount of money, that's almost $5 million just this year on travel.
Yep.
It's ludicrous. And yeah, they might be entitled to it, but doesn't mean they have to spend it. But that is probably one of my biggest drives, is that I want to see more transparency within government. I want to see less bureaucrats being paid ridiculous sums of money.
Yeah.
And I don't think politicians should get pay rises like they just bloody got when they aren't improving the economy. So when you're not improving things...
Who is this independent commission of review that votes for the politicians' pay rises?
Again, how independent could they possibly be, being that these politicians are being paid a ridiculous sum? Like, if I was getting paid as the Prime Minister, I would be able to survive on his income, after tax, without any pay after I left office for several years, because I'd have that much money put aside. So maybe their lifestyle needs to be wound back a bit and not expecting to be in this secure job for a period of time. But these long-term politicians are so bloody out of touch. And that is why I want to get in, because I want to leave a better environment and a better country than what I came into for my kids. You know what I mean? It's
I've given up on the politics side of things. I've decided that I'm going to go to be the head of the CSIRO, because if the fuckknuckle that currently enjoys that seat and gets paid over $1 million a year can get the job, then I can certainly hold it.
I'll tell you what, mate, if I get into politics, I'll just become corrupt and I'll get you in that spot.
That's great. We find out once and for all whether or not there's a firmament.
I won't be doing that. But that's why I want to get in, mate. It's and to show as well that we can do it, so everyday people can run for parliament. Because the reality is you don't need to know everything about everything to get in. You just need to make sure that you're supported by a bunch of individuals who know their subject matter, depending on what you're dealing with at the time. And they give you the advice. You speak to the general public and find out what they want. You're there to represent them, right? Their constituents. And this is, maybe I'm just being a bit of an idealist, but ultimately politicians are there to represent their constituents, right? So they should be listening to them. So whether I agree with something, if the majority of my constituents say the opposite to what I agree with, the reality is I should be saying, this is what I think, but the majority of my constituents think this, so that's what I'm going to do.
I would say probably the large majority of my constituents believe that all forms of government are illegal or unlawful. It's a belligerent occupation from a foreign government. Where do you stand on those thoughts?
That we're being controlled by outsiders?
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest, mate, I have to ask whether or not any of our politicians are true Australians, because they're not looking out for our best interests. So, in relation to that, the only thing I can say is when and if I get into Parliament, the first thing I'm going to be doing is telling people what I'm doing, so that people know what a politician does. Because most of us don't know what they do. They get all this money and they sit in Parliament, and you've got no idea what they're doing. And the amount of bills that are passing through the state and the federal Parliament, half the time you read them and you go, what is this dribble? What are you doing? Like, why? You look at our state government, like, why are you focusing on electoral voting and core flutes with a system that kind of works, but why are you looking at changing that when we've got so many other issues, such as people living on the streets and can't afford their houses? The prices are going through the roof. We pay the highest amount for power in this state than any other state or territory in the country. Why aren't you looking at alternatives or solutions to these problems? Because they're more pressing, they're more important, and
No,
as
but
opposed to candy for
not
the children.
yeah, but that's the Australian agenda. They're not working to an Australian agenda, they're working to a global agenda.
It
And
appears that way, mate. Yeah, it does.
and we apparently are just meant to believe that they're going to automatically start thinking of us again around the election time.
Oh, no, they will. They'll
Yeah.
truly, because they care. So that's when they'll come out and they'll shake your hand and, was it? I'm going to shake some babies and kiss some hands.
Yes, shaking babies and kissing hands. They're all very good at that. Once a year, or once every 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, once every 3 or 4 years. I mean, there are some pollies that get out there and get amongst it, and that's what they should be doing. But they should be, what's the word for it? You know, instead of flying first class, maybe fly economy, and actually talk to some of the people that you're supposed to be representing.
Yes, God, can you imagine Albo sitting in economy and having a conversation? Well, with me. Not that I'm doing a lot of flying,
Penny Wong. Penny Wong gets all upset and triggered when people say bad shit about her. Well, do a better job, Penny. Do a better job. Exactly. If you weren't so shit at your job, people wouldn't get upset with you. But the reality is these people become very comfortable in their positions because they've been in Parliament for a very long time.
Yeah.
And
they enjoy the wage and they love the power.
Oh, yeah. Well, you think about the amount of money they would have made. Like I said, if I was the Prime Minister, I mean, he's been Prime Minister for 2 years. That's over $1 million.
Yeah, right?
Absolutely. And it's not like he doesn't have a portfolio in property at all. Same with Dutton.
14 properties, I think he has. Yeah.
I just don't understand how they have any grasp of what it's like for the everyday people. And honestly, and I think that's the majority of the problem. They are out of touch. They're all out of touch. They've got no idea. And then you've got idiots like Lydia Thorpe. How much she's been paid to sit in Parliament and be a nuisance.
Yeah. But, you know, she's excelling. She'll probably get her bonus payment.
Again, another thing I want to see gone is any residual payments for politicians that are no longer serving the people. That needs to go.
Yep. Ads brings up a good point. Our bureaucracy, I think, is probably
I just saw that
issues that we face.
$900,000 for a bureaucrat that can't answer a Senate question. And again, why are we paying these muppets? And we've got a guy over here within South Australia that I've got appointed as the CEO of Premier and Cabinet. Damien Walker's his name. He's been paid $740,000 a year for that position. What the hell does he do for $740,000?
I'd like to know I'd like to know what the CSIRO guy does for $1,049,000 a year.
Yeah, again, I know that people say that we want to pay the best possible people for to get them out of the public sector. Well, you know what? If you don't want to work in government, go somewhere else, and I'm sure we will get somebody that can do the job for half the bloody price. I mean, that is a way too much money. Same with the RBA. You look at how much the RBA bloody commander in chief is. It's ridiculous how much money these people get paid, and they get severance packages as well. Don't forget the severance package.
Oh, the golden handshake goodbye is magnificent. I think for ex-prime ministers, it's $250,000+ a year, an office, a car, and staff.
Like I said, residual payments need to cease. If they're no longer serving the country, or, I mean, most of those guys or gals, I mean, Julia Gillard was pretty crap in general, but, you've got a whole bunch of people that are going to walk into another job. Like, you become a member of Parliament, you are going to meet people, you're going to be able to walk into another job if the electors don't want you there anymore. Look at two of our worst premiers that suddenly get medals for some reason, but one has a mental breakdown.
The worst people in the country.
Yeah, Mark McGowan, Daddy Mac, can't perform the duties of Premier.
And the public servants or whoever nominated them for this, they should be put up beside the wall as well.
You got to ask questions there. It's like, what's going on here? You know, this guy has a breakdown and then becomes a lobbyist for the same people that you know, obviously he's assisted, and then you've got bloody Triple D walking into another job, and ScoMo. Look at ScoMo, bloody getting a job with the same people that orchestrated the AUKUS deal, which was one of the worst things for Australia. Like, and then we got China over here, and we've got all our politicians sucking up to them, and yet we're buying these submarines. So yeah, and you're right. You're absolutely right, Fern. They have forgotten that they are the servants of the people.
Yeah.
And that is the problem. And that is where we actually need to speak to people and get politics to be one of those main topics of discussion and encourage other people to step up so that we can get as many independents and minor parties into the political class, so to speak. Break in. Well, that's what we need to do. We need to break in and show it that it can be done so that more people will then, you know, take on the role.
And we need to break into the educational system again and take control of that back.
Oh, how many subjects do you want to throw at me tonight? You know what? I'm an uneducated bogan from the northern suburbs of Adelaide. So, you know, it's I can only maintain a little bit inside my brain. You know, there are so many things happening within this country that are disappointing. I mean, I'm an ADF member as well. I'm a reservist, but it's every job that I've literally had is serving the community, and I mean, a lot of people don't like coppers, and that's fair enough because sometimes I don't like them either. But the reality is they're there to serve the people, and that's what politicians are supposed to do. So maybe that's my next job.
How many coppers did you run across in your career who'd forgotten about that serving the people bit?
How many coppers?
Yeah, during your police career, how many did you work with who'd forgotten?
Oh, there's a lot of wankers in the job, mate. But there are some very good people in there as well. So the problem is, I mean, within SAPOL, management put a lot of pressure on people, but my motto was always policing's about people, not stats. That's what my motto was. You can ask anyone I used to work with. That was what it was all about. If I could. If I pulled someone over, I'd be more inclined to give them a ass ripping verbally and tell them to stop being an idiot than give them a fine, because the fines generally, you know, most of the people out here couldn't afford the fines back then, let alone now, because the fines go up all the time. Every year almost they go up. So
and
but the only fine they never did was cannabis. Sorry.
No, of course not. I was living in South Australia when cannabis was legal to be growing, and then they decided that they were going to make it illegal to grow.
No, it was never legal. It was never legal. So it was. The only difference was here's a little bit of education for you. So if you're in South Australia, the best thing to do if you're going to grow any weed is to grow one plant. And this is the advice I used to give to people when I was a copper. Grow one plant in the ground and you'll get a fine if it gets found, and it will get taken away from you. So you were never allowed to grow cannabis, but you are you can grow one plant generally in the ground. I think it's up to 3 plants. If you grow them in the ground and not hydroponically, you'll get a fine. But if you grow them
I think that it used to be 13 or something. You used to be able to grow 13 plants in your backyard for personal use. Jesus. And then they figured that might have been.
That?
Yeah, well, you're a pretty hardcore user.
Like if you don't pull them out of the ground.
The SA government cut that back, and it went back to like 1 or 2. Yeah. And then is it Ergon Energy in South Australia?
No.
Whatever the leading power supplier at the time was, I can't remember now. It might have been Origin.
How long ago was this? Because ETSA
this is
used to be...
this is going back 24 years, around the year 2000, late 90s, early. And
when did ETSA get
the
sold?
electricity company formally complained to the government about their decision, because the revenue, the incoming revenue for millions and millions of dollars a month, because everybody turned the grow lights off. And I also heard there are a couple of politicians who may or may not have had a couple of containers buried in the Adelaide Hills on properties that they own, filled with grow lights.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Who were they?
Yeah. I won't go naming them here, but you and I can have a quiet conversation later.
No worries.
But yeah, there was a huge hue and cry about it, and then it got put back up to 7, I think it was. So the government said, "Oh, okay, one might be a bit much." Back up to 7. The power company got a bit more money coming back into it, because I think it's a state-run power company, so they were losing money hand over fist. And
ETSA was sold in December 1999. So they leased it in December 1999 and was sold in January 2000. So they reckon it was sold to AGL. But it's
that'd make sense why you have no power now. That makes perfect sense now why South Australia has no power. AGL are involved.
No, should we? What do you want to move on to the nuclear problem now?
Well, is it a problem? I mean, South Australia is full of uranium.
Well, I actually rang up 5AA today, and I think I was telling you this story prior, but I rang it up and I was talking about the fact that we got this push to move away from coal, but solar panels are made with coal and quartz, and then before I got an opportunity to turn around and say that it's good that Dutton is putting something forward, the bastard on 5AA just cut me off and cut me away. It's like like I didn't even get to finish saying what I was saying. But like I said before, we pay the highest amount for power in this state than any other state or territory. And we should be looking at other alternatives to address that. And wind and solar aren't cutting the mustard. It just isn't. And, solar panels, not recyclable. Wind turbines, not recyclable. Although there are options for the blades. You can crush them up and put them in road base. But we've got a problem with plastic waste as well. That should be going into, roads and things like that. We can find alternatives, but we're not exploring them. I mean, that's what CSIRO can start actually doing the little bit of science stuff and actually finding alternatives to the problems that we have.
Yeah, well, the $900,000 bureaucrat that was the number 2 at the CSIRO, they sacked him, or he resigned out of pure embarrassment because he refused to answer the questions that the Senate were putting to him, and they had to get rid of someone. Clearly, if you're the top guy, you don't go. But your underling does. So, but he no doubt will have been pushed into a very cushy position somewhere on a large golden handshake walk-away package, and he'll probably be lecturing at the university,
into a new government job. Probably
or a
into
university.
A new government job, being paid just another ridiculous amount. And this is where we need to look at things like when you're talking about education. We need to ensure that the money for education is going to education, and that our teachers are actually teaching the right curriculum, like actually teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's, the 3 fundamentals. Teach that stuff and stop worrying about whether or not Jimmy is a cat or, trapped in a girl's body. This sort of shit. Kids don't give a shit about that. They just, teach them what they need so that they can become productive members of society and develop into successful business owners even, as opposed to just lemmings.
That's exactly the word I was going to use. Lemmings. That's what the world is creating. Lemmings.
That was a bloody good game back in the day.
Back in the day, certainly was. I couldn't agree more. Hey, I'm going to let you go because it's getting a bit late, and I see your coffee's going cold or your phone's frozen. It's a very long sip you're taking at my end. But I do appreciate you spending some time with us to try and explain the goings on tonight of what's going on in South Australia. And I fear for the rest of the states as well, not so much the territories, because the territories in themselves are too small to have that much of a national impact. But this will, I think, be something that gets rolled out across every state eventually. And this will be a suck it and see in South Australia to see if the people actually complain about it or actually are a wake up to it.
Sorry, mate. To be perfectly honest, if this bill passes in the way that it reads now, there's going to be a lot of holes. There's going to be a lot of grey areas, and it's not going to be good for anybody other than the major parties.
And the lawyers, of course.
Oh, yeah. The lawyers that wrote this are very good at confusing people like me. I needed Vince to explain some of it for it to make sense to us. Like, I'm still reading it and getting a grasp of what it's going to mean. But to be perfectly honest, South Australia, we need to get upset with what our government's doing. And I know a lot of people don't like core flutes, but that's how little people like myself get our names out there for people that don't watch stuff like this. Don't follow me on Facebook or on TikTok and all that sort of thing. But that's why core flutes are important. The major parties just spam everybody. Little guys like us sparingly put them up where we can. But this literally is going to bring our budget down to bugger all. But not only is it going to do that, but you're going to be paying for it. Against your will. So whether I like it or not, my taxes are going to go towards the Labor and the Liberal Party. Same as your taxes are going to go to me and me as well. So it is not something that I think is suitable. And I think that there's certainly, like I was saying to Vince, a new party. If you created a new party and nominated 10 people, then you're going to get $2,500 for each of those 10 people as candidates. Then you fold the party. You kill the party. You just don't do it. You don't use the money for that, and you just disappear with it. I mean, that's just being as an example of something
creative thinker
that can be done with this legislation. So it's not a good. The sentiment might be there. But I doubt it because I think Maladicsux is a bit of a snake. But it literally is like the guy in the trench coat offering candy. All you have to do is get in the van.
You dress it up really nice. You get in the van, you take one. Next thing you wake up, you're dead. So, or at least in a vastly different position to where you thought you might be.
I was about to say you're not waking up if you're dead.
Sort of a weird play on words. All right, mate. Thanks very much for joining me again tonight, and all the best. Well, obviously, we'll talk to you further with news out of South Australia as and when it comes up, and when the campaigning begins in earnest. We'll be very happy to get behind you and help you out, mate. So thanks for keeping us up to date with what Maladicsux is doing.
Oh, I'm not going to be able to get that name out of my head now, but thanks again for having me on, mate. I know it's... I wasn't aware that I was coming on tonight. So for those people that may have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm on Facebook, Kim Hansen, South Australia. Contact me on there. Just flick me a message. And if I can answer your questions, I will. Me and Vince are going to be getting a website up and running as well, which will be Kim Hansen, kimhansen.com.au. And also... you can reach out to me on TikTok as well. I'm on there almost all the time. So,
beauty.
Anyway, thanks for having me on again, Carl. Good seeing you.
No worries, mate. Thanks for all this news out of South Oz, and I hope we can make some changes there in the not too distant future.
Oh, me too, mate, because I bloody live here.
True that. Cheers, mate. See ya.
All right.
Kym Hansen in South Australia, folks. Keep an eye out for that name when comes time for voting in South Australia. There are a couple of other things I want to mention here tonight. The first one is about Paul Offey and the Freedom Truck. Now, there was a hearing today in Canberra. I want to thank Corey for texting me the details of the hearing almost as soon as it had finished. The hearing was basically one of these pre-trial hearings that happen in the Supreme Court to make sure that everybody's ready to go. Paul's trial for the Freedom Truck incident was commencing on the 24th and was set down for a couple of weeks. That date has now been vacated. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that Paul won't be going to the Supreme Court in the ACT on the 24th. There will be another hearing, which Paul doesn't have to attend, on the 26th, and that hearing will be to determine a new trial date. Why is there a new trial? I got to say, it gives me no glee to tell you why there won't be a trial, but I'm not surprised. So, being the Supreme Court, you have to get yourself a pretty high-nosed lawyer and a pretty high-nosed barrister, and they cost a lot of money. You know, because we've had the boys on the show. Many of you have donated, and thank you very much for that. Those lawyers do nothing unless there is money in the bank, so to speak. But they were doing, favors and trying to help where they could, and yada, 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 yada. I started to get a bit concerned about the lawyers a couple of months ago. Michael Offey, Paul's brother, and I had been talking. We talk quite often. We were concerned about the lack of movement from the lawyers and the barrister. They didn't appear to be doing anything. And then when it came to a month out from the trial, I happen to know 4 of the witnesses that are going to be standing, and there are more than 4, but I happen to know 4 of those witnesses who will be standing up for Paul and speaking during the trial, and not one of them had been contacted by the defence team. As it turned out, none of over 30 witnesses have been contacted by that defence team. And then 3 weeks out, 3 or 4 weeks out, they start talking about taking a plea deal. Essentially going back to the same plea deal that was offered by legal aid way back when, with no resolution on the truck. No guarantee that he gets the truck back. Paul, to do that, it would mean that Paul has to plead guilty to 2 charges. If he were to agree to that deal, it would mean that his trial would be kicked from the Supreme Court and be dropped back down to the Magistrates Court, because the charge that he will plead guilty to are hearable in the Mag Court, not the Supreme Court. This kicks it out of the realm of a jury trial. And of course, if you're pleading guilty, there is no need for a jury or a trial, because you're walking in and just accepting sentence. Paul, and I don't know if you know him, you'll know he's a very honest young man who has some difficulties. He's got some challenges. 3 different separate and serious brain injuries that don't affect his ability to drive or communicate. He just does it, the communicating part, a little bit differently. However, communicating was not what his lawyers were doing. They were doing exactly the opposite, absolutely nothing. And so, with 3 weeks out from the trial and not a witness being spoken to by the defence team to line up a defence, there was absolutely no plan to make a defence for Paul by this legal team of high regard in Sydney. So we all had a bit of a talk about it, and there really wasn't much of a discussion to be had. Paul made the decision that he didn't want them representing him anymore, quite simply because they had been, and this is the weird thing, this particular solicitor had been very much in our court, very much in the let's take the bastards on, let's embarrass them, let's it was described to me today, and it's a very apt way of describing things. Lawyers are not today, if you have a lawyer defending you in a case, he is not usually an offensive lawyer, like playing a game of offense, taking it to the prosecution. Today, these people who claim to represent you in a court play a game of defense, take the easiest way out. Now, I have my own reasons for wondering why they would do that. What are their motivations? But we'll get into those at a different time. But that, I believe, is a serious, serious issue in our legal fraternity. Somebody got to this solicitor and this barrister and told them, you know, we don't want this to go to court. Make sure it doesn't go to court. The reason they don't want it to go to the Supreme Court is it will be thrown out, hopefully with prejudice. Because when the jury hears of the lies, the deception, the bullshit that the ACT police, the AFP, what a cesspit of liars and corruption the AFP is. Backed up by the DPP, although maybe that's changing because there is now a new Director of Public Prosecutions in Queensland, from Queensland. She was the assistant DPP here, and she's moved down to the ACT as DPP. So we'll see what happens with a new DPP. Shane Drumgold has certainly got things to answer, and pardon me, will be made answer to them. So the news today is no trial on the 24th, no reason to go to camp on that day for Paul, at any rate. Nor on the 26th. That's just going to be a mention while they try and set a new hearing date, a new trial date. When will that trial date happen? I would imagine, given that the brief that was supplied by the previous solicitors to the new solicitor and barrister was of such inadequate standard that even the judge referred to it in the hearing. Just really bad, really, really bad. Basically means got to start from scratch. And that means probably 6 months, because it'll be when can the court find a hole and when can the new solicitors find a hole in their schedules as well to represent him on those dates. So there's going to be some to and froing behind the scenes. The 26th will be the date where they will hopefully lock in that new trial date. And then hopefully these new solicitors and barristers, who I believe are very much offensive players, I don't suppose there's any harm in telling you. Just trying to think. No, I don't think there's any harm, and I don't think I'm breaking any confidences by telling you who those solicitors are. They're the same people that represented Nick Patterson in Melbourne over his outrageous charges, all of which were thrown out recently. And the judge in that case had a great deal to say about the illegality of the Victorian police's evidence, what they were saying versus what their body cameras and other vision gave evidence of. Will any of those officers face perjury charges, I wonder? I doubt it. We live in hope, but I doubt it. So, yeah, not too flash. All right, what have we been down? Nearly going an hour. So there were a couple of other little things I think I had here that I wanted to show you. There is a scam going around for MyGov. Dear valued customer, our records indicate that you're eligible to receive a refund from MyGov in the amount of $820.45. This refund is on your registration date of 06 15 24. To access your free fund, please log into your MyGov account as soon as possible. Then this is kind of thing what it looks like. And that's the thing. The process is quick. It's straightforward. You'll be able to claim your money without any hassle. Don't miss this opportunity. Log in. And there is the click to log into MyGov. This is a scam. And it should be noticeable to you as a scam right from the very first page, because they are using an American date stamp. They're using month, day, year. Interestingly enough, the US is the only country in the world that does month, day, year. So the Australian government certainly doesn't do it like that. So if you happen to see something like that about MyGov and some $820, do not click on that, because it's not going to help you one iota. I did have another little video here I wanted to show you. I'll squeeze it in quickly before we go. Now this is from I've forgotten his name now, but he's basically the head of our TGA now. This is the bloke who rode roughshod over our health system during those spicy coffee years, and now he's been responsible for negotiating our involvement in the latest WHO pandemic agreement.
What was agreed on Saturday morning, and Australia was one of 194 countries, member states of the WHO, being a member state institution, and it's not a big daddy as you suggested. It is guided by the member states. What was to go into a process which under the WHO arrangements and other UN arrangements, that we have a year to go through all of those processes that we've talked about in terms of Australian legal requirements. We are not safe unless everyone is safe. With an infectious diseases know no borders. As we know from our experience in the COVID pandemic, we closed our border, caused a lot of disruption in other ways. We had to reopen our border, and as soon as we did, the virus appeared. It can only be by working internationally with all other countries that we can deal with a pandemic like that, and we will have other ones in the future. And so these amendments that were made through long negotiations, right up to and including last Friday night, was successful in getting to those things over the line, and I'm very happy that that's the case. And I'll reiterate my statement. It was one of the proudest moments as an Australian, witnessing that Australian leadership at ministerial level, at officials level, to get those negotiations completed.
Up against all right, folks, going to love you and leave you. Be safe if you're heading out on the roads tonight. I'm going to leave you tonight. If you hang around after I play the closer, I usually put a meme up or something to keep you a bit interested. Tonight, I want you to do a little bit of homework. I'm going to put a map up. It comes from 1418. It's a Chinese map. Have a good look at the map. You'll see some countries on it, including the USA. I know it's full of dickhead drivers now, but, well, just go and have a look. The map is circa 1418, okay? And I guess the only other hint that I need to give you there is you should probably go then and figure out what year Columbus discovered America. All the dickheads aren't on the roads, folks. See ya.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!